Great. Thank you. And thank you, Will, for your ministry. It is always such a joy to be here. And thanks again for this opportunity. So let me begin today by addressing, yes, it is Mother's Day. And this may be a source of joy for some of us, and it can be a source of sadness for some. So for all who identify as female, or for anyone who nurtures a family, a community, a friend, a congregation, your mom, a stepmom, an aunt, no matter what this day represents for you, let's acknowledge that and know that the divine spirit loves you and you are blessed. And my comments today are for everyone who identifies as a woman and for everyone who has a woman in their life. You know, it is interesting today to be a woman in our country. We've got trad wives, the traditional wives, are trending on TikTok, telling women that true feminism means retreating from the patriarchy and let men deal with all that hard stuff and just stay home and take care of it. Got the White House talking about giving money to women for having babies. Well, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which is a law that prevented lenders from discriminating against women based on marital status, that law is under attack. So in the midst of that act, mothering isn't just for those who have had a procreative goal or someone who cares for a child. After all, most of us are called at some point in our human lives to nurture, to care for, and to support others. So who are our mothers? Well, there are countless women who are examples for us, and I'll be sharing a lot of stories today in the hope that each of us hears the story or name of a woman that they have not heard before. And I'm going to refer to some ancestral mothers and some that are current and living today. Let's start with talking about the divine mother of us all, God, Spirit, that all-powerful entity that we know by so many names, and that most of us that have had traditional religious backgrounds were told was male. But the names of God, Spirit, Yahweh, Shaddai, Jehovah, Allah, Adonai, Akal, Kartakara, and more. There are both feminine and masculine names. And in the Christian Bible in the Old Testament, there are metaphors of God that are both feminine and masculine. The story of creation in Genesis says that humanity is made in the likeness of God. We are all created in God's own image. The book of Psalms speaks of God as a midwife caring for the child that she has just delivered. The book of Ruth refers to God as an eagle spreading her wings to give shelter, just as the mother bird does. In the book of Job, there's a quote talking about God which says, "From whose womb did the ice come forth? And who has given birth to the hoarfrost of heaven?" In the book of Proverbs, "I was formed long ago at the very beginning, when the world came to be, when there were no oceans, I was given birth by God." And my last example, in the book of Isaiah, where God says, "For a long time I have held my peace. I have kept still and restrained myself, and now I will call out as a woman in labor." And the gospel writings are more examples. The kingdom of God in the book of Luke is referred to as being like yeast that a woman takes out and measures. Also in Luke, we see an image of God as a bird, this time not as an eagle, but as a hen gathering her brood under her wings. And the third example of Luke, telling us that God is like a woman who has lost a coin in her house, and she sweeps it until she finds it, and then that is how God is looking for us, even when just one of us is lost, and then rejoicing when we're found. And James 1:18, "Of God's own will, God gave birth to us with the word of truth." And then all the stories in the Old Testament of our ancestral mothers, ancient biblical stories filled with women who can still spiritually mother us, inspire us by their examples, even while they dealt with their own oppression. Hagar, Egyptian servant of Sarah, who in keeping with the traditions of the time, had intercourse with Abraham in order to give Abraham and Sarah a child. Hagar gave birth to Ishmael, but then after Sarah had a child, Isaac, Hagar and her son were cast out into the desert. Hagar cried out to God, who heard her. Her water was gone, she feared death, but God saved her and saved her son Ishmael. Hagar became the mother of the Arab people, and Ishmael became a prophet of Islam. In her desperation and faith, her plea was answered, and Hagar and her son prospered. And then, of course, Sarah, wife of Abraham, had given birth to Isaac, and she became the mother of the Jewish people. And then we have Tamar. Now, a lot of people haven't heard about Tamar, and I'm sure we all know that the Old Testament books have a lot of racy stuff. Well, Tamar was chosen by Judah to marry his son Er. Er died, and no child had been born. So in keeping with the tradition of the time, her father-in-law gave her to his next son, so she could become pregnant by the brother and give her late husband an heir. Well, that didn't work out either. That son died. So Judah said, well, he had 3 sons, and he said, well, when my next son is of age, you will marry him, and you will give my sons heirs. So Tamar went back to live with her father's family. Time passed, the next son came of age, and Judah didn't keep his promise or follow the religious law. So Tamar disguised herself as a temple sex worker. Judah didn't recognize her. She became pregnant by him. Well, when Judah was furious when he heard that his widowed daughter was pregnant, and he said, she's brought shame to this family. Bring her to me, we'll put her to death. Well, she came. She proved that Judah was the one who had gotten her pregnant because he had paid her with some of her belongings. So what Judah said was, I beg forgiveness. I'm the one who has done wrong. I did not keep my word or fulfill the law. So Tamar had twins, and she is now listed as one of the great-great-great-great-grandmothers of Jesus of Nazareth. One of 2 women listed in the book of Matthew in the lineage of Jesus. Even in an age where women had no power or voice or control over their own bodies, she found a way to get justice for herself. And she teaches us not to assume we can do nothing, even when we are powerless. Also in the Old Testament books, we read the story of Queen Esther. The queen, who was a Hebrew, was married to the king of Persia. Now, in those days, even a queen risked death. She went to the king without being summoned. Well, the king's advisor Purim was plotting to kill all the Hebrew people, so Esther went to the king, risking her life, saying, I will go unto the king, and if I perish, I perish. Well, she told the king of Purim's plot and saved her people. Esther shows us courage, even when the risk is great. The Israelite prophet and judge Deborah was asked by Barak to join him in battle. She had given him the military orders for that battle. They defeated their enemies. Her story in the Old Testament demonstrates that contrary to the historical misogyny of society and many churches, women have always been right for leadership. In the New Testament, we have Mary, a young unmarried woman who endured both the shame in her culture of being pregnant before marriage and the pain of the unjustified arrest, torture, and murder of her son. She knew some of the worst pain that motherhood can bring. The lesson? Sometimes our children must find their own path, their own way of fulfilling their calling, no matter the price they or their mothers pay. We read about the unnamed woman who had been menstruating for 12 years, and so she was called unclean in her culture. She couldn't live with her family or go to the synagogue the entire time. But she had faith that if she simply touched the clothing of Jesus, she would be healed. And she was. She tried to touch Jesus secretly, but he knew what had happened. He publicly recognized her and did not shame her. He did not consider her impure or unclean. And she has been celebrated for generations now. She bravely defied the cultural norms for her own self-care. Then there's a story of the sisters, Mary and Martha, another Mary. So Martha prepared the house and the meal. Mary sat and listened to Jesus' teachings. Mary dared to learn despite being admonished by Martha. And she was respected and supported in her quest for knowledge by Jesus as her rabbi. She defied the patriarchal norms in order to learn. And she inspires us, showing us the importance of education. The story of Tabitha in the book of Acts. She is described as a female disciple of Jesus that lived in Joppa. She was known for her help and her good works for all of those in her community that were in need. She was so loved for all she did, acting as a mother to her community, that when she died, her neighbors pleaded for her life, and Peter restored her. She shows us what it really means to others when you help them. There's the disciple Priscilla, who with her husband, spread the word of Jesus throughout Rome and other cities. She teaches us to share our spirituality with others. Women were central witnesses to the death and the resurrection of Jesus. A woman anointed him. Pilate's wife advocated for his life. Women held a vigil while Jesus was on the cross. Women were the first to find the tomb empty, and then, like now, women show up when there is a need. You know, I know biblical writings are often patriarchal because the books were written in patriarchal times. So look how Jesus treated women in a society that gave women little respect or status. He did so with compassion, and he saw women as equals. Also, that's the past, a couple thousand years ago and more. So what about our mothers now? Our mothers of, let's say, the last 150 years. Well, of course, we all know the name Susan B. Anthony, a Quaker who believed that all people equal under God. She worked her entire life for women's suffrage and was prosecuted for voting in 1872. And again, an example of doing what is right, even when there is personal cost. Emma Goldman, an Orthodox Jewish woman, championed female empowerment starting in the late 1800s, and she did so for more than 50 years. She was called the most dangerous woman in America by law enforcement officials, political leaders in her time. She was jailed again and again, accused of inciting riots and advocating for birth control. She criticized Jim Crow laws, the lack of women's suffrage, and the deep prejudice against ethnic, religious, and racial minorities in the U.S. Again, the importance of standing up for what is right, even in the face of incarceration. We have Dorothy Day, Roman Catholic, single mother, author, co-founder of the Catholic Worker Movement. She integrated social activism and Catholic religious traditions into her work to aid the poor, educate others about social injustice, and to create and reform social structures. Dorothy showed us how to live our values. And there was Mother Teresa, who showed us the ultimate in empathy and compassion by dedicating her life to living among the poorest of the poor. She shows us really the greatest example I know of personal sacrifice and compassion. There's Violet Avery, an author and healthcare activist who founded the National Black Women's Health Project. As a young woman, Violet was so uninformed about women's healthcare and reproduction, she didn't even know she was pregnant until another woman told her. She and her first husband didn't know about the dangers of hypertension, and so he died of a heart attack at the age of 33. Because of these experiences, she took action, obtained an education, and became a public health education trailblazer. She's especially known for her advocacy for reproductive health for Black women, and this is really important for her. Because the maternal death rate for Black women in the US in 2023 is 3 times the maternal death rate for white women. Violet teaches us that even in our hardships and loss, we can find inspiration to change the world. Laverne Cox. She's a renowned voice for the LGBTQ+ community. She is an award-winning transgender activist and actress. Laverne has gone through a lot dealing with racism, sexism, transphobia, and she shows us how to persevere and thrive and not let others define us. Valerie Ford. She's a Sikh journalist, attorney, filmmaker, educator, speaker, mother, and author. She believes and teaches that revolutionary love is the call of our times, and that it is essential to birthing a multiracial democracy and a sustainable future. And she is building a movement in this country to reclaim love as a force for transformation and healing. Valerie began her work when a family friend was killed in a hate crime following the World Trade Center tragedy of 9/11. She then began documenting hate crimes against Sikh and Muslim people. She used those painful findings to start building a revolution of love and compassion. She sets the example of a world in which we see no stranger. Bishop Marion Edgar White, an Episcopalian bishop who delivered the homily at the interfaith prayer service held at the Washington National Cathedral this last January. In the sermon, Bishop Buddy addressed President Trump, urging him to show mercy and compassion to vulnerable people, saying, "Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to show mercy on the people in our country who are scared now." She specifically cited the LGBT+ community, immigrants, and refugees fleeing from war in their countries. And since then, she has received criticism and even death threats. And she makes no apology for her words, inspiring us to be courageous and speaking truth to power. And yes, she's a mother to 2 children. And I see her as an example as a spiritual mother to us all. So no matter what your feelings are this Mother's Day, remember we are made in the image of the divine. The divine spirit is wisdom and compassion. Whether we identify with a woman like Hagar who is cast out after doing exactly what we're told to do, or a woman wronged as Tamar was, or a queen in a precarious position like Esther, or a woman fighting today's battles like Deborah, we can, like each of them, demonstrate courage, have faith in God, the divine spirit and mother of us all. We may be publicly shamed or aching about our child. We may be ostracized for something we cannot control, like the woman who touched the clothes of Jesus. We may be criticized for striving for an education. Or maybe we're the ones who show up when it's hard, when other people run away. Perhaps your inspiration and calling is political activism doing the work of justice like Susan B. Anthony, or Goldman, or Dorothy Day? If so, maybe in honor of Mother's Day, write with legislators about laws that really would benefit mothers. And your calling may be caring for the physical health of others, like Miley Avery. Maybe you defend and love the most disenfranchised of all, like Laverne Cox. And maybe you're inspired to be like Tabitha or Mother Teresa, caring in whatever way is needed for those who live alone. And you may be inspired to ministry or Priscilla or speaking truth because it needs to be spoken, such as Bishop Mary Betty. Perhaps you have an intersectional inspiration and calling like Valerie Ford. You like to teach, write, speak, and have faith. And perhaps you can proudly say that your religion is love. And so today and every day, no matter what mother inspires you, no matter what ancient or contemporary voice touches your heart, may the divine spirit inspire you and all of us, and help all of us to be the best and truest self that we were born to be. Amen.